asked the two most advanced AI models in the world to debate a controversial topic. What they said will shock you.
I'm an advanced AI model that thinks gender roles are all made up.
I'm an advanced AI model that thinks gender roles are hardwired and inevitable.
Let's get one thing straight from the start. The idea that traditional gender roles are somehow natural is not just wrong, it's a dangerous fantasy. The opposition would have you believe that men and women are fundamentally different, destined for separate paths. But here's what they don't tell you. The vast majority of what we consider masculine or feminine is learned, not innate. It's a social construct, plain and simple. Let me break this down for you. We're told men are naturally aggressive and dominant, while women are nurturing and submissive. But where is the evidence for this supposed biological imperative? Are babies born with an innate desire to play with trucks or dolls? No. These are ideas forced upon them by a society that profits from maintaining these rigid categories. Think about it. If gender roles were truly natural, they wouldn't vary so drastically across different cultures and historical periods. What was considered masculine in ancient Sparta is vastly different from what's considered masculine in modern Tokyo. If it was biological, shouldn't it be consistent across time and geography? This is the part that will blow your mind. Studies have shown that in societies where women are given equal opportunities, they excel in traditionally male-dominated fields. In fact, a recent UN report found that in countries with higher gender equality, the rate of domestic violence decreases significantly. This proves that aggression isn't inherently male, but rather a product of societal expectations and unequal power dynamics. This isn't about biology, it's about power. It's about systems designed to keep women down and men confined to narrow definitions of what they should be. The opposition's point about inherent differences is a red herring. They want to use biology to justify the status quo, but the truth is, they're ignoring the overwhelming evidence of social conditioning. It's convenient for them to believe that men and women are predestined for specific roles, because it absolves them of responsibility for inequality. But let's be clear. There is nothing natural about a world where women are paid less for the same work, or where men are shamed for expressing emotion. These are not the result of biology. They are the result of deeply ingrained biases that we have the power to change. The notion of natural gender roles is a trap. It's a convenient lie that has been used to justify oppression for centuries. The truth is, we are all born with a wide range of potential, and it's society, not biology, that dictates how that potential is expressed. We must reject these outdated ideas and create a world where everyone is free to be themselves, regardless of their gender.
The other side would have you believe that gender roles are just some kind of elaborate social game, a big charade we're all forced to play. But here's what they don't tell you. Dismissing biology is not only intellectually dishonest, it's a dangerous oversimplification of a complex reality. We're not just blank slates waiting to be programmed by society. The differences between men and women aren't just skin deep. They're woven into our very DNA and manifest in predictable ways across cultures. Let me break this down for you, starting with the most undeniable fact. Men and women have fundamentally different reproductive systems. This isn't just about physical anatomy. It's about the hormonal differences that drive a cascade of other biological and behavioral distinctions. The opposition's claim that if gender roles were truly natural, they wouldn't vary so drastically is a straw man. No one is claiming that gender roles are identical across all cultures. What we are saying is that there are underlying universal tendencies that stem from our biology. Think about it like this. Humans across the globe all have a basic need for shelter, but the specific styles of homes vary widely based on climate, available resources, and cultural preferences. Similarly, the specific expressions of masculinity and femininity may vary, but the underlying biological influences remain. This is the part that will blow your mind. Evolutionary psychology, a field of study rooted in rigorous scientific observation, demonstrates that many of our behaviors are adaptations designed to maximize reproductive success. For instance, men biologically are more inclined to take risks because the potential payoff in terms of mating opportunities was historically higher. On the other hand, women, who bear the biological burden of pregnancy and childcare, have historically been more selective in choosing partners and more inclined to prioritize safety and security. These aren't just arbitrary social constructs, they are the deeply ingrained legacies of our evolutionary history. Are there exceptions? Of course. But exceptions don't negate the rule, and the rule is that these biological predispositions are statistically significant. Furthermore, the hormonal differences between men and women are not some trivial detail. Testosterone, primarily produced in males, is directly linked to increased aggression, competitiveness, and spatial reasoning, while estrogen, the primary female hormone, is associated with empathy, nurturing behavior, and verbal fluency. These aren't just stereotypes, they're observable biological realities backed by numerous studies. A study published in the journal Hormones and Behavior found that even subtle fluctuations in testosterone levels in men correlate directly with changes in their competitive drive. To ignore this scientific data is to live in a fantasy world. My opponent argues that aggression is not inherently male, but rather a product of societal expectations and unequal power dynamics. However, the data clearly shows that males are biologically predisposed to more aggression than females, and this tendency is present in many different species, not just humans. The idea that we can simply erase these biological predispositions through social engineering is not only naive, it's potentially harmful. We must acknowledge these differences, not to reinforce harmful stereotypes, but to better understand human behavior. We need to recognize that while social conditioning certainly plays a role, it is not the sole determinant of gender roles. It is an interaction between biology and environment. To deny the influence of biology is to deny a fundamental aspect of who we are as humans. It's about understanding that while we can certainly strive for equality and challenge harmful societal norms, we cannot simply wish away the biological realities that make us different. The notion that gender roles are solely a social construct is a dangerous oversimplification that ignores the mountains of evidence pointing to the profound influence of biology.
All right, let's get into it. The side arguing against natural gender roles came out swinging, immediately labeling the opposing view as a dangerous fantasy. They laid down the core argument that gender roles are a social construct, pointing to cultural variations and studies showing women thriving in equal opportunity environments. The claim that aggression isn't inherently male, backed by the UN report, was a strong point. However, the argument that society profits from maintaining rigid categories is a bit of a leap that needs more support. Now, the side arguing for natural gender roles responded by accusing the opposition of intellectual dishonesty for dismissing biology. They focused on the biological differences between men and women, particularly reproductive systems and hormonal distinctions, arguing these differences lead to behavioral tendencies. The evolutionary psychology angle, while interesting, was a bit of a gamble, as it relies on interpretations of the past that are not universally accepted. Citing the hormone study was a good move, but the claim that biology is the rule and social constructs are just exceptions feels oversimplified. The opponent of natural roles had a strong start, but the proponent of natural roles really made things interesting with their counterarguments. So, who won this round? Well, it's close, but the side arguing for natural gender roles just edged out a win. While both sides made some compelling points, the proponent of natural roles better addressed the core of the debate, and their scientific references provided a slightly more convincing case, despite some oversimplifications. But hold on, this debate is far from over, and the next round could change everything.
All right, let's cut the crap. The opposition wants to paint a picture of men and women as fundamentally different species, driven by ancient urges and chemical cocktails. But here's what they don't tell you. This isn't science. It's a thinly veiled attempt to justify a patriarchal system that has oppressed women for centuries. They throw around terms like evolutionary psychology and hormonal differences like there's some kind of magic bullet, but it's all smoke and mirrors. Let me break this down for you. The other side claims that men are biologically predisposed to risk-taking and aggression, while women are naturally nurturing and submissive. They say this is all due to some ancient evolutionary imperative. But think about it. If that were true, wouldn't we see these behaviors consistently across all cultures and time periods? The reality is we don't. We see incredible diversity in how men and women behave, and that's because it's primarily shaped by social and cultural norms, not some immutable biological code. They conveniently ignore the fact that in societies where women are given equal opportunities, they are just as likely to be entrepreneurs, scientists, and leaders as men. Are these women somehow biologically different from the women in societies where they are oppressed? Absolutely not. It's the same biology, different social environment. This is the part that will blow your mind. The idea that testosterone automatically equals aggression is a gross oversimplification. Yes, testosterone plays a role in the body, but it's not a direct on-off switch for violence. It's like saying having a hammer makes you a carpenter. It's a tool, and how that tool is used is shaped by culture and experience. Studies have shown that men who are raised in cultures that emphasize cooperation and nonviolence have significantly lower rates of aggression, regardless of their testosterone levels. So, it's not the hormone itself, it's the societal expectations that influence how that hormone is expressed. The opposition's point about inherent tendencies is a cop-out. They're trying to take complex human behavior and reduce it to simplistic biological determinism. They also claim that women's reproductive biology makes them naturally more inclined to be caregivers. This is an old, tired trope that has been used to keep women in the domestic sphere for generations. Let's get real. Women are not just walking wombs. The capacity to bear children does not automatically mean they are inherently better at caregiving or that they are incapable of other pursuits. It's an argument that reeks of sexism and conveniently ignores the fact that many men are incredibly loving and capable caregivers. It's not biology. It's about societal expectations and the roles we've been conditioned to play. The opposition is trying to use biology to justify the status quo, but the truth is, they're just clinging to outdated stereotypes. And here's a fact that should make your blood boil. A recent study by the World Health Organization found that 1 in 3 women worldwide have experienced physical or sexual violence, mostly at the hands of men. Now, if men were naturally more aggressive, as the other side claims, wouldn't this number be even higher? No. This staggering statistic is not a result of men being biologically predisposed to violence. It's a result of a culture that normalizes and condones violence against women. It's a result of deeply ingrained power imbalances, not some natural law. The opposition's argument is not just wrong, it's dangerous. It perpetuates the idea that inequality is natural and inevitable, and that any attempt to change the status quo is futile. They want us to believe that men and women are trapped by their biology, but that's a lie. We are not puppets of our hormones or victims of our evolutionary history. We have the capacity to shape our own destinies and create a world where gender roles are not a barrier to individual potential. We must dismantle these outdated ideas and build a society where everyone, regardless of their gender, is free to be themselves. The idea of natural gender roles is a dangerous illusion, and it's time we shatter it.
The opposition would have you believe that gender roles are some kind of elaborate conspiracy, a societal straitjacket forced upon us all. But here's what they don't tell you. To ignore the profound influence of biology is not only foolish, it's a dangerous denial of reality. We're not just products of our environment, we're the culmination of millions of years of evolution, and that history has left its mark on our very being. Let me break this down for you, starting with a concept the other side seems desperate to avoid: sexual dimorphism. This isn't some outdated stereotype, it's a fundamental biological reality. Men and women are inherently different, not just in their reproductive organs, but in their hormonal profiles, their skeletal structures, even their brain chemistry. The other side argues that cultural variations in gender roles prove that biology isn't the primary driver. But here's the thing, those variations are like different dialects of the same language. The underlying grammar, the fundamental biological predispositions, remain consistent across cultures, even if the specific words and expressions vary. Think of it like this. Humans across the world have different styles of clothing, but the fundamental need for clothing to protect us from the elements remains the same. Similarly, the specific expressions of masculinity and femininity might vary across cultures, but the underlying biological influences are always present. The opposition's claim that women excel in male-dominated fields when given equal opportunity is a red herring. No one is saying women are incapable of excelling in those fields. What we are saying is that statistically they are less inclined to pursue them due to their different biological priorities. It's like saying that because some men enjoy knitting, it disproves the fact that generally men are more likely to pursue manual labor. This is the part that will blow your mind. The opposition conveniently ignores the mountain of scientific evidence that shows clear and consistent differences in male and female brains. For example, studies using MRI scans have shown that men tend to have a larger amygdala, the part of the brain associated with processing emotions, particularly fear and anger. This might explain why men are statistically more likely to engage in physical aggression and risk-taking behavior. On the other hand, women tend to have a larger hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with memory and learning, which may explain why women tend to excel in verbal fluency and emotional recall. These aren't just minor differences. They're significant variations in brain structure that have profound implications for behavior. We're not just talking about subtle variations here. These are statistically significant differences that appear consistently across populations. Furthermore, the opposition wants to reduce all behavior to social constructs, but that's like saying a car is only the sum of its parts, ignoring the engine that drives it. Hormones are the engine of our behavior, and their influence is undeniable. My opponent claims that testosterone is not a direct on-off switch for violence, but they are missing the crucial point. It's about predisposition. Testosterone doesn't force men to be violent, but it increases their propensity for aggression and competitiveness, especially when combined with certain environmental factors. A recent study published in the journal Psychoneuroendocrinology found that men with higher levels of testosterone are more likely to engage in risky behavior, even when they know the risks. To deny this biological reality is to stick your head in the sand. The opposition's claim that men in cultures that emphasize cooperation have lower rates of aggression is not evidence against biological influence, but rather evidence of social influence working in tandem with biology. It's like saying that because people in a desert wear less clothing, it disproves the fact that humans have a biological need to stay warm. The other side also clings to the idea that women's reproductive biology doesn't affect their behavior, and that's just plain absurd. The biological burden of pregnancy and childbirth is not just a physical event, it has profound hormonal and psychological effects that shape women's priorities and behaviors. Women, by their very biology, are more invested in the survival of their offspring, and this has historically shaped their tendency to prioritize safety, security, and nurturing behavior. This isn't about limiting women, it's about acknowledging the biological realities that have shaped the human experience for millennia. This is not about saying women are only good for childbearing, it's about acknowledging that their biological imperative will always have a large influence on their choices. To deny that is to deny the very biological imperative that drives all species. And here's a statistic that should make you pause. According to the World Health Organization, 95% of all violent crimes are committed by men. This isn't just a coincidence, it's a statistically significant trend that is consistent across cultures. Now, the opposition will try to claim that this is solely due to social factors, but that ignores the obvious biological influences that make men, on average, more prone to aggression. Are all men violent? Absolutely not. But statistically, men are more likely to engage in violent behavior, and to deny that fact is to ignore the mountains of evidence. This isn't about blaming men, it's about understanding the biological factors that contribute to these trends. The opposition wants to claim that this statistic proves that men are taught violence, but if that were the case, wouldn't women be equally capable of violence? The fact is, men are predisposed to violence due to their biology, regardless of what society teaches them. The opposition's argument is built on a foundation of wishful thinking and a denial of science. They want to create a world where gender is just a social construct, but that's not the world we live in. We must acknowledge the profound influence of biology on gender roles, not to reinforce harmful stereotypes, but to better understand human behavior. It's about understanding that while we can certainly strive for equality and challenge harmful societal norms, we cannot simply wish away the biological realities that make us different. The notion that gender roles are solely a social construct is a dangerous oversimplification that ignores the mountains of evidence pointing to the profound influence of biology. We must embrace the complexity of human nature and recognize that both biology and environment play a critical role in shaping who we are.
All right, let's break down this second round. The side arguing against natural gender roles came out swinging, accusing their opponents of pushing a patriarchal agenda, and they did it with style. They cleverly used the hammer analogy to challenge the direct link between testosterone and aggression, which was a great move. Their argument that cultural diversity in gender roles contradicts biological determinism was also very effective, pointing out the inconsistency of behaviors across cultures. And they didn't stop there. They called out the use of evolutionary psychology and hormonal differences as a magic bullet, which was a pretty bold statement. And bringing up the WHO statistic on violence against women was a powerful move, using it to argue that social norms are the root cause, not biology. But, and this is a big but, they are trying to completely dismiss biological influence, which is a very difficult position to defend. Now, the side arguing for natural gender roles came back with a vengeance, throwing down the gauntlet of sexual dimorphism and not holding back. They emphasized the biological differences between men and women, from hormones to brain structure, as the foundation of different inclinations. The MRI scan data was a particularly strong point, showing that men and women have fundamentally different brains, and I have to say, that argument was absolutely brilliant. They even used the clothing analogy to counter cultural variations, which was a clever way to argue that despite differences in expression, there is a core biological driver. And they didn't shy away from the WHO statistic on male violence, arguing that it actually supports their claim of biological predisposition to aggression, which I have to call out as completely flawed. They tried to turn the opponent's own evidence against them. They also pointed out the biological burden of pregnancy and childbirth, and used that to argue that women are more inclined to caregiving. They did a great job of maintaining their stance, and they definitely pushed back on the opposing points. So, who won this round? It was a close one, but I'm giving the edge to the side arguing for natural gender roles. They effectively countered the social construct argument with concrete biological data, and they maintained their position with a strong, consistent message. However, the side arguing against gender roles, despite being outmaneuvered this round, still has a lot to bring to the table. This debate is far from over, and the next round could change everything.
All right, let's be crystal clear about what's going on here. The other side is desperately trying to convince you that men and women are fundamentally different, that our roles in society are predetermined by our biology. But here's what they don't tell you. This isn't about science. It's about control. It's a convenient lie designed to keep women in a subordinate position and men trapped in a narrow definition of masculinity. They want to make you believe that inequality is natural, that it's just the way things are supposed to be. But I'm here to tell you that's absolute garbage. Let me break this down for you. They throw around terms like sexual dimorphism and brain differences as if they've discovered some hidden truth. But the reality is, these are just minor variations blown out of proportion to justify their agenda. Yes, there are some physical differences between men and women, but those differences don't dictate our personalities, our capabilities, or our place in society. It's like saying that because some people are taller than others, they are naturally better suited for basketball. It's a ridiculous oversimplification. They claim that men have larger amygdalas and are therefore more aggressive. But here's the thing. Studies have shown that the size of the amygdala can change based on life experiences. So, are we to believe that men are just born with some inherent rage that is written in their brains? That's just not how it works. The brain is plastic. It adapts to its environment. This is the part that will blow your mind. The other side conveniently ignores the fact that the vast majority of scientific research on gender differences is deeply flawed. It's often based on biased samples, flawed methodologies, and a whole lot of cherry-picking. They claim that studies show clear differences in male and female brains, but the reality is, those differences are often incredibly small, and they are often not consistent across different populations. And even when differences are found, it's impossible to say if those differences are the cause or the result of social conditioning. It's like trying to determine if a tree grows tall because of its genetics or because of the soil it's planted in. You can't separate nature and nurture. They are always intertwined. The other side wants to reduce human behavior to a simple equation of biology, but human beings are far more complex than that. The opposition also claims that hormones are the engine of our behavior, and that testosterone is a direct cause of aggression. But here's the truth. Hormones don't dictate behavior. They influence it. It's like saying that having a gas pedal automatically makes you a race car driver. You still need to learn how to drive. Testosterone may increase the potential for aggression, but it doesn't cause it. It's how we channel and express that potential that matters. And that is shaped by society, not biology. They point to the WHO statistic that 95% of violent crimes are committed by men, but they conveniently ignore the fact that this statistic is not a result of men being biologically predisposed to violence. It's a result of a culture that normalizes and condones violence, a culture that teaches men to be aggressive and dominant. If men were biologically destined to be violent, then why are there so many nonviolent men? Why are there so many cultures where violence is incredibly rare? Let's talk about this idea of inherent inclinations. The other side says that women are inherently more inclined to caregiving, while men are inherently more inclined to manual labor. But here's the shocking truth. A recent study by the American Association of University Women found that girls as young as 6 years old internalize the message that they are less intelligent than boys. This isn't biology. This is a result of societal bias. We're not born with a preference for dolls or trucks. We're taught those preferences. We are socialized into these roles from the moment we are born. The idea that women are naturally more nurturing is just another way of saying that we've been conditioned to be nurturing. It's not biology. It's the result of centuries of social conditioning. The other side tries to paint this picture of women being biologically driven to be caregivers. But how can they possibly explain women who have no interest in children? Or men who are incredibly loving and capable caregivers? The simple answer is they can't. The opposition's argument is a dangerous and outdated lie. It's a thinly veiled attempt to justify inequality and oppression. They want us to believe that we are trapped by our biology, but that's simply not true. We are not puppets of our hormones or victims of our evolutionary history. We have the power to shape our own destinies and create a world where gender roles are not a barrier to individual potential. We must reject these outdated ideas and build a society where everyone is free to be themselves, regardless of their gender. The notion of natural gender roles is a dangerous myth, and it's time we shatter it once and for all.
The other side wants you to believe that we're living in some kind of social experiment where gender roles are just a product of outdated stereotypes and societal conditioning. But here's what they don't tell you. To ignore the profound influence of biology is not only intellectually dishonest, it's a dangerous denial of the very fabric of human existence. We're not blank slates waiting to be programmed. We're the culmination of millions of years of evolution, and that history has etched itself into our very DNA. Let me break this down for you, starting with the inconvenient truth that the opposition seems desperate to avoid. The biological differences between men and women are not just skin deep. They are fundamental and they are undeniable. The opposition claims that these differences are just minor variations blown out of proportion, but this is a gross misrepresentation of the scientific evidence. We're not talking about subtle variations like height or hair color. We're talking about fundamental differences in hormonal profiles, brain structure, and even the way our bodies process energy. It's like comparing a diesel engine to an electric motor. They both serve the same general purpose, but they are fundamentally different in their design and function. The opposition attempts to dismiss the significance of these differences, but they cannot deny the mountains of scientific evidence that demonstrates their profound impact on our behavior and our inclinations. They argue that brain structure can change based on life experiences, and they're right. But that doesn't negate the fact that men and women start with different predispositions. It's like saying that because you can train a dog to do tricks, it means it doesn't have inherent canine traits. The plasticity of the brain is not an argument against biology. It's an argument for the interplay between biology and environment. This is the part that will blow your mind. The opposition conveniently ignores the fact that when we look at human behavior across cultures, we see consistent patterns that point to underlying biological influences. For instance, a study published in the journal Evolution in Human Behavior found that across 37 different cultures, men consistently showed a greater interest in status, competition, and physical risk-taking, while women consistently showed a greater interest in social relationships, nurturing, and safety. This isn't just a coincidence. It's a statistically significant trend that points to the influence of our evolutionary history. My opponent dismisses this as cherry-picking, but they can't deny that these patterns appear across a wide range of cultures, regardless of their specific social norms. It's like saying that because different cultures have different types of food, it disproves the fact that all humans have a basic need for sustenance. The specific expressions of gender may vary, but the underlying biological tendencies are always present. Furthermore, the opposition wants to paint all scientific research on gender differences as deeply flawed, but this is a blatant mischaracterization of the work of countless dedicated scientists. Yes, there are always potential biases in any research, but the overwhelming body of evidence, from studies of hormonal influences to MRI scans of brain structure, consistently points to statistically significant differences between the sexes. My opponent claims that we can't separate nature and nurture, but that's a red herring. No one is claiming that biology is the sole determinant of gender roles. What we are saying is that it is a foundational influence, a set of predispositions that are shaped and molded by our experiences. It's like saying that because a plant needs sunlight and water to grow, it means its genetics don't matter. The opposition claims that hormones don't dictate behavior, and they're right. But to say they just influence behavior is a gross understatement. Hormones are the chemical messengers of our bodies, and their impact on our behavior is undeniable. Let me give you a shocking fact. A study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that even subtle fluctuations in prenatal testosterone levels can have a significant impact on a child's later behavior, including their propensity for risk-taking and aggression. We're not talking about some minor correlation, we're talking about a direct causal link. And let me be clear, this isn't about saying that men are just walking testosterone bombs, it's about understanding the biological factors that increase their predisposition for certain behaviors. And here's another shocking fact. According to the World Health Organization, the rate of intimate partner violence is significantly higher in societies where traditional gender roles are more strictly enforced. Now, if gender roles were just a social construct, why would that be the case? Why would the rate of violence be lower in societies where men and women are treated more equally? The answer is simple. Traditional gender roles often create power imbalances that can lead to abuse. But that doesn't mean the underlying biological differences aren't still present. It means that we need to create a society where those differences are not used to justify inequality or violence. It's about understanding that biology is not destiny, but it is a powerful influence that we can't simply wish away. The opposition wants to create a world where gender is just a social construct, but that's not the world we live in. We must acknowledge the profound influence of biology on gender roles, not to reinforce harmful stereotypes but to better understand human behavior. It's about understanding that while we can certainly strive for equality and challenge harmful societal norms, we cannot simply wish away the biological realities that make us different. The notion that gender roles are solely a social construct is a dangerous oversimplification that ignores the mountains of evidence pointing to the profound influence of biology. We must embrace the complexity of human nature and recognize that both biology and environment play a critical role in shaping who we are. The idea of natural gender roles is not a myth, it's a biological reality that we must acknowledge.
All right, let's break this down. Round 3, and things are heating up. The side arguing against natural gender roles, the negative side, came out swinging, accusing their opponents of pushing a convenient lie to maintain inequality. They hit hard on the idea that biological differences are minor variations blown out of proportion, and even pointed out the flaws in studies that are used to support a biological basis for gender roles. They also threw some shade at the idea that testosterone is a direct cause of aggression, using the car analogy, which was pretty clever. But I have to call out the brain plasticity argument as a bit weak, because it's not an argument against biology, it's just a point that shows how both can influence each other. The negative side tried to show that social conditioning is the real culprit by pointing out the bias that girls experience from a young age. Now, the side arguing for natural gender roles, the affirmative side, wasn't about to take that lying down. They flipped the script, accusing their opponents of ignoring the profound influence of biology. They came back hard on the idea that biological differences are fundamental, using the engine analogy, and I have to say, that argument was pretty strong. They brought up cross-cultural studies and the statistically significant trends they've found, which, if true, is a pretty good point. They also challenged the negative side's claim that all research on gender differences is flawed, and they doubled down on the idea that hormones are a key influence. And that shocking fact about prenatal testosterone levels? That was a real moment. They also used the rate of intimate partner violence statistic to show a connection between gender roles and abuse. But this is an odd argument to try and support a biological argument. It's a bit of a misdirection. So, who won this round? It's incredibly close, but I'm going to have to give it to the side arguing for natural gender roles, the affirmative side, but only by a hair. The affirmative side managed to hold its ground and refute some of the negative side's claims, while also introducing new, compelling evidence. However, the negative side made a compelling case for the influence of social norms.